The damaged alien ship moved slowly through space toward Earth's space station. Its metal surface was covered with deep scratches and burn marks from many battles. Inside the ship, Ambassador Veltar felt tired and hopeless. He had spent months traveling from one planet to another, begging different alien species for help against the Korthok Empire. But every time, the aliens would listen to his story and then shake their heads in fear. Captain Kim Soo-jin stood at the observation deck, watching the strange vessel approach. She had been Earth's main contact person for alien visitors for 5 years now. In that time, she had met traders, explorers, and even a few refugees. But this ship looked different. It carried the weight of desperation. The docking process took longer than usual. The alien ship's systems were old and damaged. When the airlock finally opened, 3 beings stepped through. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but their skin looked like living crystal that changed colors with their emotions. Right now, that crystal skin was a dull gray, the color of defeat. Ambassador Veltar was the tallest of the 3, his translator. Device hung around his neck, occasionally sparking from damage. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death. "Greetings, humans of Earth," he said, his words coming out choppy through the broken translator. "I am Veltar of the Zilani Federation. We have traveled far to reach you." Captain Soo-jin led them to the main meeting room. The walls displayed a star map showing Earth's position in the galaxy. The Zilani stopped and stared at it, their crystal skin flickering with what looked like surprise. "Your species is so young," Veltar whispered. "Only recently discovered space travel, yet you have built such impressive stations." Lieutenant Park Min-ho joined them, carrying a datapad filled with preliminary scans of their ship. He was Earth's military advisor for alien encounters. His job was to assess potential threats, but these visitors clearly weren't dangerous. "Please," Soo-jin offered, gesturing to chairs designed for humanoid visitors. "Tell us why you've come so far to find us." Veltar's crystal skin darkened to deep blue. What humans had learned meant sadness among his people. "We seek help, but we know we cannot ask for much. Your species is new to the galaxy. You have your own world to protect." He activated a small device that projected images into the air. The hologram showed beautiful worlds with crystal cities reaching toward the sky. Then the images changed. The same worlds were burning. Cities lay in ruins. Refugee ships fled through space, overcrowded and desperate. "The Korthak Empire has destroyed 17 civilizations," Veltar continued. "They do not conquer, they eliminate. Every world that resists is turned to ash. Every species that fights back is wiped from existence." Park Min-ho studied the tactical data streaming from the alien device. The Korthok ships were massive and crude, built for one purpose, destroying everything in their path. They didn't use strategy or clever tactics. They simply overwhelmed their enemies with superior numbers and firepower. "How many species have you asked for help?" Soo-jin asked gently. 43, Veltar replied. "All refuse. They say the Korthok are too strong, too violent. They fear that helping us will only bring destruction to their own worlds." The room fell silent. Soo-jin looked at the images of burning worlds and felt something stirring in her chest to anger. These were innocent people being slaughtered by bullies, and everyone was too scared to help. "What exactly are you asking for?" she asked. "Very little," Veltar said quickly. "Perhaps a few advisors, someone to help us build better defenses. We do not expect you to fight our battles. We know that would be asking too much from such a young species." Park Min-ho and Soo-jin exchanged glances. The Zilani had made a critical mistake. They assumed humans were like every other species they had encountered, peaceful, timid, and afraid of conflict. "We'll need to discuss this with our government and military leaders," Soo-jin said carefully. "This situation is more serious than you might realize." Veltar's crystal skin flickered with hope for the first time in months. "You will consider helping us?" "We'll consider it," Soo-jin confirmed. "But I should warn you, when humans decide to help, we don't do things halfway." The Zilani delegation had no idea what that meant. They were about to discover that they had just made contact with the most dangerous species in the galaxy, one that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, one that had very strong opinions about bullies, deep inside Earth's military headquarters. Admiral Li Huiyanwu stared at the massive holographic display floating in the center of the war room. The three-dimensional map showed the entire galaxy with red zones marking Cordo-controlled space. Those red areas were spreading like a disease, consuming world after world around him. Dozens of military officers worked at their stations, analyzing data that had been streaming in since the Zilani visit 3 days ago. The room hummed with quiet conversation and the soft beeping of computers processing information from across. Known Space Colonel Choi Minzu walked up to the display, pointing at the pattern of destruction. "Look at this, Admiral. 17 entire civilizations gone. Not conquered, not enslaved, completely destroyed." He traced the Korthok expansion route with his finger. They moved from system to system like locusts, leaving nothing behind. Holograms zoomed in on each destroyed world. Where once there had been cities, forests, and oceans, now only dead rock remained. The Korthok didn't just win battles. They eliminated all traces of the species they defeated. Major Song Yunji had been studying Korthok military tactics for hours. She highlighted several battle recordings the Zilani had provided. "Their strategy is simple but effective," she explained. "They send massive fleets to attack simultaneously. When the enemy sees how outnumbered they are, they usually surrender immediately. And if they don't surrender," asked another officer, "then they get wiped out completely," Yonji replied grimly. "The Korthok don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. Don't show mercy. It's total destruction or nothing." Admiral Huiyanwu studied the battle recordings carefully. The Korthok ships were huge and powerful, but they moved in predictable patterns. Their tactics were basic. Just charge forward and overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers. It worked because every species they had encountered so far was peaceful and unprepared for real war. "They've been fighting sheep," he said quietly. "Every species in this galaxy thinks like prey animals. When faced with a predator, they either run or freeze in terror." Dr. Kang Nun, the military's expert on alien biology, had been analyzing the Zilani physiology reports. "The Zilani are herbivores," she confirmed. "Their entire species evolved to avoid conflict. Their brains are literally wired to seek peaceful solutions. They can't even imagine the kind of warfare we're capable of." She brought up comparative brain scans on the display. "Look at this. The Zilani brain has enlarged areas for cooperation and empathy, but their fear response is extremely sensitive. When threatened, they instinctively seek to appease rather than fight." "What about the other species the Korthok destroyed?" asked Colonel Choi. "All similar," Dr. Kang replied. "Herbivores, omnivores, with peaceful tendencies, or species that evolved without natural predators. None of them understand predator behavior." Room fell quiet as the implications became clear. The Korthok had been terrorizing the galaxy because they had never encountered a species that actually enjoyed fighting. They had never faced predators who saw war as a challenge to be won rather than a disaster to be avoided. Admiral Huiyanwu turned to address the entire room. "Korthok have made a fundamental mistake. They assume all intelligent species are afraid of violence. They've built their entire empire on intimidation and shock tactics." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But humans didn't evolve to be afraid of violence. We evolved to be very, very good at it." Officers around the room nodded grimly. Unlike every other species in the galaxy, humans had spent thousands of years perfecting warfare. They had fought each other, learned from defeats, and constantly improved their military technology and tactics. "The Zilani want defensive advisors," Huiyanwu continued. "They're thinking like prey animals. They want to hide and hope the predator goes away. But that's not how you deal with bullies." He gestured to the star map, showing the expanding Korthok territory. "We're not going to help them build better hiding places. We're going to solve this problem permanently." Colonel Choi straightened up. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "Begin full military mobilization," Huiyanwu commanded. "Contact all fleet commanders. I want battle groups prepared for immediate deployment. We're not sending advisors to help the..." Zilani cowered behind walls. His voice grew harder. We're going to show the Korthok what happens when predators decide to hunt." The room erupted into activity as officers began implementing the mobilization orders. The Korthak Empire was about to learn a lesson that would echo throughout the galaxy. There was a difference between being the strongest species and being the most dangerous one. Within 6 hours of Admiral Hyan Wu's mobilization order, Earth began changing in ways that stunned the visiting Zilani delegation. Captain Yoon Jaemin stood with Ambassador Veltar on the observation deck of Orbital Station Alpha, watching the transformation unfold below them across Earth's surface. Factories that had been producing cars, computers, and household items suddenly switched to military manufacturing. Assembly lines that built entertainment systems now churned out advanced weapons. The same workers who had been making civilian electronics were now assembling military-grade communication devices and targeting systems. "How is this possible?" Veltar asked, his crystal skin flickering with confusion. "Your entire industrial system changed overnight." Jaemin smiled grimly. "We've been preparing for this possibility for decades. Every major factory on Earth has dual-purpose capabilities. In peacetime, we make consumer goods. In wartime, we make weapons." Below them, massive cargo ships began arriving at the orbital platforms. But these weren't ordinary trade vessels. They were military transports, each one capable of carrying enough equipment to supply an entire army. The ships moved with mechanical precision, loading supplies that had been stockpiled for years. Veltar's translator struggled to process what he was seeing. "We asked for a few advisors. Perhaps some defensive specialists. This looks like... We're going to war," Jaemin finished, "because we are." Down on Earth, General Park So-young was coordinating the deployment of the 7th Human Expeditionary Force. Unlike the scattered defensive positions the Zilani had shown them, human military units moved with terrifying coordination. Every soldier knew exactly where to go, what to do, and how to work with the units around them. The command center buzzed with activity as thousands of personnel prepared for departure. Transport schedules, supply chains, and communication networks all functioned. With clockwork precision, the Zilani had never seen anything like it. In the training facilities, Sergeant Kim Tae-ho was putting his Marines through intensive drills. The soldiers practiced fighting in zero gravity, something that would be crucial for space combat. They learned to use the three-dimensional nature of space to their advantage, attacking from above, below, and all sides simultaneously. "Remember," Tae-ho shouted to his troops, "the Korthok fight like they're still on a planet's surface. Think in terms of forward and backward, left and right. They don't understand that in space, the enemy can come from any direction." The Marines practiced boarding techniques that would have been impossible for most species. They could cut through ship holes, fight in rotating corridors, maintain combat effectiveness, even in the chaos of a damaged spacecraft. These were skills that took years to develop, but humans had been perfecting them for generations. What? Truly shocked, the Zilani observers were the weapons systems humans casually demonstrated. Plasma rifles that could melt through the strongest known materials. Antimatter charges that released more energy than entire Korthok ships could generate. AI-controlled drones that could make tactical decisions faster than any living being. Dr. Kong Yuna showed the aliens through the weapons development laboratory. "These are standard infantry weapons," she explained, picking up a rifle that looked impossibly advanced. "Every human soldier carries equipment that would be considered superweapons by most galactic standards," Veltar Said whispered nervously. "Their basic soldiers are better equipped than our elite special forces." But the most disturbing thing for the Zilani wasn't the weapons or the coordination, it was the attitude. Human soldiers weren't afraid or reluctant about going to war. They were excited. They trained with enthusiasm, discussed tactics with passion, and prepared for battle like athletes getting ready for a championship game. "Your species enjoys conflict," Veltar observed with growing alarm. "We're good at it," Jaemin replied simply. "And we don't like bullies." As the first human battle group departed Earth's orbit, the Zilani delegation realized they had made a terrible miscalculation. They had expected to find another peaceful species to add to their coalition of the desperate. Instead, they had awakened something that had been waiting for exactly this kind of challenge: the fleet that left. carried enough firepower to destroy entire continents. But more importantly, it carried human soldiers who understood war not as a last resort, but as a problem to be solved with overwhelming force and tactical brilliance. The Korthok Empire was about to discover why. In all of human history, no external force had ever successfully conquered Earth. They were about to learn the difference between being strong and being dangerous. The space around the Vega system looked peaceful until reality suddenly tore open. 10 massive Korthok warships emerged from hyperspace, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Captain Morthok stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the scanner readings with satisfaction. Another supply convoy, he growled to his crew. The Zilani are trying to evacuate their civilians again, so it'll be quick work. Morthok had destroyed dozens of refugee ships over the past months. It was always the same. The terrified aliens would see his fleet and immediately surrender, begging for mercy that never came. His thermal cannons would reduce their ships to glowing debris within minutes. But today was different. Instead of panicked civilian vessels, his scanners detected something unusual. A single ship, much smaller than his flagship, was moving toward them at incredible speed. "What kind of vessel is that?" demanded his tactical officer. "Unknown configuration," came the reply. "It's not Zilani design. The power readings are ... strange." Commander Shinhei 1 watched the enemy fleet on her destroyer's main screen. Korthok ships were exactly what the intelligence reports had described: massive, crude, and built for intimidation rather than efficiency. Their weapons were powerful but poorly designed, their armor thick but full of structural weaknesses. "All stations, combat ready," she announced over the ship's communication system. Her voice was calm and professional, like someone preparing for a routine training exercise. "Let's introduce ourselves properly." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Weapon systems came online, defensive shields activated, and the ship's advanced maneuvering systems prepared for combat. Unlike the Korthok vessels, the human destroyer was built for speed, precision, and tactical flexibility. Captain Morthok stared at the approaching ship with growing confusion. "Why aren't they running? Don't they understand what we are?" His communications officer tried to contact the strange vessel. "Unknown ship, you are facing the Korthok Empire. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." The response came back in clear, unaccented galactic standard. "This is the human destroyer. Inshan, you are in violation of galactic peace accords. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Morthok's crew exchanged glances. Humans. None of them had heard of this species before. "Are they some kind of Zilani allies?" "It doesn't matter," Morthok snarled. "One ship against 10. Open fire." The Korthok fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of energy weapons. Plasma bolts and thermal beams filled the space where the human ship had been just moments before. But the destroyer was no longer there. "Where did it go?" shouted the tactical officer. The human ship had moved with impossible speed, changing direction in ways that should have been physically impossible. Its advanced engines and inertial dampeners allowed it to dodge attacks that would have been certain. Hits against any other vessel, Commander Heiwan watched the enemy fire pass harmlessly. "Through empty space? Their targeting systems are primitive," she observed. "They're firing where we were, not where we're going to be." Lieutenant Commander Bei Junsuok coordinated the counterattack from his position at the weapons station. His fingers danced across the controls, launching missiles with surgical precision. Each projectile was guided by advanced AI systems that could adapt to changing battlefield conditions. "Target their weapon systems first," Heiwan ordered. "Let's see how they fight when they can't shoot back." The human missiles streaked toward the Korthok fleet, weaving between defensive fire with impossible agility. The Korthok point defense, systems designed to stop crude ballistic weapons, were useless against the sophisticated guidance systems of human ordnance. Captain Korthok watched in horror as his weapons batteries exploded one by one. "How are they doing this? Our armor should stop anything." But human weapons weren't designed like anything the galaxy had seen before. They used antimatter warheads that released incredible amounts of energy, combined with precision targeting, that could find the weakest points in any armor system. "Return fire," Morthok screamed. But half his weapons were already destroyed. The remaining Korthok ships tried to surround the human destroyer. But the smaller vessel moved through there, formation like a dancer, always staying just out of reach. Its point defense systems intercepted every shot that came close, while its own weapons continued to tear the enemy fleet apart. "What are these creatures?" Morthok demanded, as his flagship shuddered under another missile hit. His thermal scanners showed the human ship generating massive amounts of energy, yet somehow remaining stable and maneuverable. "Commander?" Hay-1 smiled grimly as her weapons officer reported target lock on the Korthok flagship. "Fire all tubes. Let's end this quickly." The antimatter torpedoes struck the Korthok fleet with devastating effect. Each warhead released enough energy to power an entire city, focused into a beam that cut through the enemy ships like they were made of paper. In 12 minutes, 8 of the 10 Korthok vessels were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The 2 surviving ships fled in panic, their captains broadcasting warnings about the terrifying new species they had encountered. The mighty Korthok Empire, which had never lost a battle, had just been defeated by a single enemy vessel. Word spread through both fleets with incredible speed. Humanity had arrived, and they fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. In the depths of the Korthok Empire's military headquarters, war leader Grakthor stared at the battle reports with growing disbelief. For 300 years, his empire had swept across the galaxy like an unstoppable force. They had crushed 17 different civilizations without losing a single major warship. Every species had either surrendered immediately or been wiped out completely. But now, scattered across his desk were reports that made no sense. An entire assault fleet, 10 of his most powerful warships, had been destroyed by a single enemy vessel. The survivors babbled about impossible movements, weapons that bent the laws of physics and tactics they had never encountered. "This is impossible," Grakthor growled, his massive claws tearing through the data tablets. "No species in this galaxy fights like this. The survivors must be lying to cover their cowardice." His intelligence officer, a smaller Korthok named Veldok, cowered before the war leader's rage. "The sensor logs confirm it, sir. Only one enemy ship engaged our fleet. It moved in ways our computers cannot analyze. Their weapons, they're unlike anything we've seen." Grakthor's fury boiled over. He had built his reputation on absolute dominance, on being the most feared force in known space. These mysterious humans had embarrassed him in front of his entire military command. Such insults could not stand. "Gather the 3rd and 5th fleets," he commanded. "We will show these humans what happens when they challenge the Korthok Empire, find their homeworld, and burn it to ash." Meanwhile, deep in space aboard the human command ship Sol, Admiral Oh Sung-hoon was monitoring Korthok fleet movements through an advanced sensor network. The alien empire was mobilizing massive forces, but their movements were predictable and clumsy. "They're angry," observed Captain Nam Soo-jin, studying the tactical displays. "Look at these fleet formations. They're abandoning defensive positions and moving everything toward our territory." Sung-hoon nodded grimly. "They're making the classic mistake of escalating without understanding their opponent. They think brute force will solve their problem." The situation became more serious when long-range scouts reported Korthok fleets approaching 3 human colony worlds. These weren't military targets, they were civilian settlements with families, farmers, and researchers. The Korthok intended to murder innocent people to send a message. "Sir," reported Nam Soo-jin, "they're targeting New Busan, Jeju Station, and the Terra Nova colony. Combined population of nearly 2 million civilians." Admiral Sung-hoon's expression hardened. The Korthok had just made a fatal error. They had threatened human families, and that changed everything. "All units, weapons free," he announced over the fleet communication system. "The enemy has chosen to target civilians. Show them what total warfare means." The human response was swift and terrifying. Stealth destroyers that had been hidden throughout Korthok space suddenly revealed themselves. launching precision strikes against military installations. These ships used advanced cloaking technology that made them invisible to enemy sensors until they chose to attack. Orbital bombardment platforms materialized above Korthok worlds like deadly ghosts. Their antimatter cannons reduced entire defense networks to glowing ash within minutes. The Korthok had never faced weapons that could deliver such devastating firepower with surgical precision. Colonel Lim Dong-wook led the first ground assault. On the Korthok fortress world of Morthok Prime, his marines dropped from orbit in armored pods, landing directly in the heart of enemy territory. The Korthok had never faced opponents who could fight effectively in any environment: vacuum, atmosphere, underground, or in zero gravity. The battle footage that streamed back to Earth showed human soldiers moving through Korthok strongholds. With mechanical efficiency, they used advanced armor, energy weapons, and tactical coordination that the enemy couldn't counter. Every human unit knew exactly where their allies were, what the enemy was doing, and how to exploit any weakness. Back on Earth, the Zalani delegation watched the unfolding conflict with growing horror. Ambassador Veltar's crystal skin had turned a pale white, the color of terror among his people. "These weapons," he whispered to his aide, "they can destroy entire continents. The humans have technology that violates every treaty about civilized warfare." Dr. Kong Yuna tried to explain. "We don't fight to conquer or enslave. We fight to end conflicts permanently. The Korthok chose to threaten our civilians, so we're eliminating their ability to threaten anyone ever again." Human AI-controlled drone swarms consumed entire Korthok fleets, each tiny robot making tactical decisions faster than any biological brain could process. They saw psychological warfare programs that broadcast surrender terms directly into enemy ships, breaking Korthok morale before the shooting even started. "What have we done?" Veltar asked, his voice barely audible. "We asked for defensive advisors. Instead, we've unleashed something that makes the Korthok look like children playing with toys." The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about the difference between being the strongest species and being the most dangerous one. Korthok Empire was about to discover why humanity had never been conquered, and why they should never have threatened human families. The darkness of space around Earth's solar system suddenly exploded with light as reality tore open in 1,000 different places. The Korthok First Fleet emerged from hyperspace in the most massive military deployment the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships stretched across millions of kilometers, blotting out entire starfields with their bulk. War leader Grakthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought World Killer, watching Earth grow larger on his main screen. This was the moment he had been planning for months. The humans had humiliated his empire, destroyed his fleets, and made him look weak in front of the entire galaxy. Now they would pay the ultimate price. "Primitive species always break when you threaten their breeding grounds," he declared too. His assembled commanders will burn their world to ash and end this resistance once and for all. His tactical officers nodded eagerly. The plan was simple and brutal: overwhelm Earth's defenses with sheer numbers, then systematically destroy every city, every military installation, and every human settlement. When the galaxy saw humanity's homeworld burning, no one would dare challenge the Korthok Empire again, but on Luna command. Earth's primary military headquarters, Admiral Kim Do-young, was watching the approaching fleet with calm satisfaction. He had been preparing for this moment since the first human ship had encountered the Korthok. Earth wasn't just humanity's homeworld, it was the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy. "Let them come," he announced to his staff officers. "They want to see our homeworld. Show them what it means to attack predators in their den." As the Korthok fleet advanced, Earth's orbital defenses came online with mechanical precision. Defense platforms that had been disguised as asteroids suddenly revealed themselves, bristling with weapons. Automated missile batteries that had been hidden in the asteroid belt began launching coordinated attacks. The entire solar system had been turned into a massive fortress. The Korthok expected to find a terrified planet begging for mercy. Instead, they encountered defensive fire that was more intense than anything they had ever imagined. Orbital rings. around Earth exploded with weapons fire. Space itself seemed to be shooting at them from every direction. "What is this?" Gregthur snarled as his ships began taking heavy casualties. Where are all these weapons coming from? His intelligence officer was frantically trying to analyze the defensive systems. "Sir, the entire solar system is armed.
Ow.
They've turned every asteroid, every moon, every orbital platform into a weapon system. This isn't a planet, it's a fortress." The battle became even more intense when Korthok drop pods began penetrating Earth's atmosphere. The alien warriors expected to find panicked civilians running in terror. Instead, they encountered something that shocked them to their core. General Hong Minyoung coordinated the ground defenses from his command bunker deep beneath Seoul. Every major city on Earth had been prepared for exactly this kind of attack. The streets were monitored by advanced sensors. Buildings had been reinforced to serve as defensive positions, and the civilian population had been trained in urban warfare. "Remember?" Hong announced to his defenders. "They're expecting sheep. Show them wolves." The Korthok warriors who landed in downtown Tokyo found themselves facing not terrified civilians, but organized resistance that used every building, every street, and every tunnel as a weapon. Human defenders appeared from sewers, rooftops, and hidden bunkers, attacking with precision and then vanishing before the aliens could respond in the space battle above. Captain Yang Tajun led his fighter squadron through the chaos of the orbital battle. His small, fast ships danced between the massive Korthok capital ships like angry wasps attacking a bear. The aliens had never faced opponents who could coordinate attacks across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Target their weapon systems," Yang ordered his pilots. "We don't need to destroy their ships. We just need to make them helpless." The human fighters used advanced AI systems to coordinate their attacks perfectly. While one squadron distracted the enemy's point defenses, another would attack from a different angle. The Korthok ships were powerful, but they couldn't defend against attacks coming from above, below, and all sides at once. As the battle raged, the Korthok began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. This wasn't a simple attack on a defenseless world. They were fighting the most dangerous species in the galaxy on their home territory, where every advantage belonged to the defenders. The battle lasted for 18 brutal hours. When it finally ended, the mighty Korthok First Fleet was nothing but debris floating in Earth's gravity well. As flagship drifted powerless, its hull cracked open like an egg. The war leader himself was found unconscious in the wreckage. His crew either dead or captured, of the 1,000 ships that had attacked Earth. Fewer than 50 survived to limp away and spread the word of their defeat. The Korthak Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, had just been shattered by a single world's defenses. Humanity had demonstrated why they were the galaxy's apex predators. The Korthak Empire would never recover from this defeat, and every species in the galaxy would learn a valuable lesson: never attack human families in their home. After the devastating defeat at Earth, the Korthok Empire was like a wounded animal, dangerous but no longer invincible. Their main fleet lay in ruins around humanity's homeworld. The remaining forces were scattered across dozens of star systems. It was time for humanity to demonstrate what they had been building toward for months. Admiral Seo Chang-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Indomitable, watching the largest human fleet ever assembled spread out before him. 500 warships, each one packed with the most advanced weapons technology humanity could produce. The combined firepower of this fleet could turn entire planets into glass, yet every weapon was controlled with surgical precision. "The enemy is broken," he announced to his fleet commanders during the pre-battle briefing. "Their main force is destroyed, their leadership is in chaos, and their remaining fleets are demoralized. Now we finish what they started." The human advance began with mechanical efficiency that shocked even their alien allies. Battle groups struck simultaneously across dozens of star systems, each attack perfectly coordinated with the others. Korthok had never faced opponents who could wage war across such vast distances, while maintaining perfect communication and timing. Unlike the Korthok's crude smash-everything approach, Human forces moved with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Each target was carefully selected, each attack designed to achieve maximum effect with minimum collateral damage. Just winning battles, they were systematically dismantling the enemy's ability to wage war. Colonel Quan Hai-jin led the assault on Morkata, the most heavily fortified world in the Korthok Empire. Her Marines approached the planet using stealth transports that could slip past enemy sensors undetected. When they finally revealed themselves, they were already inside the enemy's defensive perimeter. "Remember your training," she told her troops. As they prepared for the drop, "These aren't the crude boarding tactics the Korthok use. We're going to show them what real soldiers can do." The Marines hit the ground running, moving through the fortress city with lethal precision. They used advanced communication systems to coordinate their attacks, always knowing where their allies were and what the enemy was doing. Room-to-room fighting, urban warfare, psychological operations reduced the mighty Korthok, its military to scattered groups of frightened survivors. The alien observers watched in, fascination and growing terror as humans demonstrated the art of total warfare. This wasn't the brutal, overwhelming force the Korthok used. It was something far more sophisticated and terrifying. Combined arms tactics meant that ground forces, orbital support, and fighter squadrons all worked together seamlessly. Advanced AI coordination allowed human commanders to process information and make decisions faster than any biological brain could manage. Captain Ryu Sungmin commanded the Orbital Bombardment Division, but his job wasn't to destroy cities. It was to eliminate military targets with surgical precision. His ships carried weapons that could destroy individual buildings while leaving the structures next to them completely untouched. The enemy had never faced opponents who could calibrate their destruction so perfectly. "Target the command center," he ordered his weapons officer. "Leave the civilian areas intact. We want to defeat them, not become them." The precision was terrifying to observe. Human weapons could punch through 50 feet of reinforced armor to destroy a single computer terminal, or level an entire military base while leaving a hospital across the street completely undamaged. This wasn't just superior technology. It was a completely different philosophy of warfare. The Zilani delegation huddled in their quarters aboard the human command ship, overwhelmed by the scale of military operations unfolding around them. They had expected defensive support, perhaps a few advisors to help them hide from the Korthok. Instead, they were witnessing the complete transformation of galactic warfare. "They fight like machines," whispered Ambassador Veltar, his crystal, skin flickering with awe and fear, but machines with souls. "They show mercy to civilians while destroying their enemies with absolute efficiency." His aide watched the tactical displays showing human forces advancing on multiple fronts simultaneously. "They're not just winning battles, they're rewriting the rules of how wars are fought." The Korthok Empire was crumbling under systematic assault. Their crude military doctrine, which had been effective against terrified prey species, proved completely useless against apex predators who had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Every Korthok tactic had a human counter-tactic. Every Korthok weapon faced a superior human alternative. Within weeks, the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was reduced to isolated pockets of resistance. The humans had demonstrated something that shocked every species in known space it was possible to wage: total war while maintaining perfect discipline and precision. The galaxy was learning that humanity didn't just fight to win, they fought to solve problems permanently. The Korthok homeworld of Morthok Prime hung in space like a dying giant. Its once mighty orbital defenses reduced to floating debris by weeks of human precision strikes. The planet that had been the heart of a galactic empire now looked wounded and vulnerable. Its protective shields flickering weakly against the void in the deepest bunker beneath the planetary capital. Acting war leader Velthik cowered before his communication screens. Grekthar was dead, captured during the disastrous attack on Earth. And now the responsibility for the Empire's final hours fell on his shoulders. Around him, its remaining officers waited in terrified silence as human ships surrounded their world like predators circling wounded prey. Admiral Jung Woo-seok commanded the siege from his flagship, the massive battlecruiser Sejong, positioned at the edge of the Korthok home system. His fleet had taken defensive positions around the planet with methodical precision, cutting off all escape routes while maintaining perfect firing solutions on every military target below. The Korthok defenders expected the humans to begin orbital bombardment immediately. That's what they would have done. Rain destruction from above until nothing remained but ash and regret. Instead, something unprecedented happened. Attention, Korthok Command. Jung's voice broadcast across all frequencies, reaching every ship, every military installation, and every communication device on the planet below. This is Admiral Jung Woo-seok of the Human Defense Force. I am authorized to offer you terms of surrender. The message continued with clinical precision. Surrender your military assets, and we will accept your capitulation. Your civilian population will be protected. Your government will be restructured under human oversight. Continue resistance and face total annihilation. The silence that followed was deafening. Never in the history of the Korthok Empire had an enemy offered terms after achieving total victory. They conquered completely, or were conquered completely. There was no middle ground in their understanding of warfare. The response came within minutes, not from the government, but from individual ship commanders across the Korthok fleet. Vessels began powering down their weapons systems. Crews abandoned their battle stations, some actually broadcasting surrender messages directly to the human fleet. The empire that had terrorized 17 civilizations was surrendering without firing a single shot. Major Yu Hyung led the first occupation forces to land on Morthok Prime, her troops moving with professional efficiency through the empty streets of the capital city. The Korthok civilians who dared to peer from their hiding places expected to see conquerors bent on destruction. Instead, they found disciplined soldiers who treated them with careful respect. Your military capacity is forfeit, she announced to the assembled Korthok leadership in the government building. Your weapons production facilities will be dismantled. Your warships will be converted to civilian use. Your government will be restructured under human oversight to prevent future aggression. The Korthok officials nodded numbly, still unable to process what was happening. They had expected death, slavery, or at best complete cultural annihilation. Instead, they were being offered a chance to rebuild their civilization under human protection. Captain Park Jin-woo supervised the most remarkable transformation the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human engineers worked alongside Korthok technicians, converting massive weapons factories into facilities for producing civilian goods. Military academies became schools for teaching peaceful sciences. Warrior training grounds were transformed into agricultural centers. We're not here to destroy your culture, Park explained to his confused Korthok counterparts. We're here to help you become something better than what you were. The Zilani delegation watched these developments with growing amazement. Ambassador Veltar's crystal skin shifted through colors that had no names in galactic standard emotions too complex. For simple translation, how do they do it? He whispered to his aide. How do they wage such terrible war and then show such compassion? Dr. Kong Yuna, who had been studying the transformation, offered her analysis. Humans fight to solve problems, not to dominate. Others, they saw the Korthok as a problem to be solved, not as enemies to be destroyed. The speed of the transformation was breathtaking. Within days, the galaxy's most feared empire was becoming a protectorate. Former Korthok warriors were being retrained as peacekeepers. Their advanced knowledge of galactic geography and military tactics was being used to hunt down the remaining pockets of their own empire that refused to surrender. They're turning their greatest enemies into their most useful allies, observed Veltar. The same beings who destroyed 17 civilizations are now helping to protect the survivors. The answer to the Zilani's confusion lay in humanity's fundamental nature. They were indeed apex predators, capable of devastating warfare and ruthless efficiency. But they were also builders, protectors, and guardians of peace. They didn't fight because they enjoyed violence. They fought because they couldn't tolerate injustice. The Korthok Empire had been a cancer in the galaxy, spreading destruction and fear wherever it went. Humanity had surgically removed that cancer, but they had also saved the healthy tissue beneath. The Korthok people themselves weren't evil. They had simply been led by a culture that glorified conquest and brutality. Under human guidance, that culture was being transformed into something entirely new. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of a new kind of victory, one that didn't just end wars, but prevented them from happening again. 6 months had passed since the Korthok Empire's surrender. The galaxy looked completely different. The Zalani Federation's capital world, once a dim and fearful place filled with refugees, now buzzed with unprecedented activity. Ships from dozens of different species filled the orbital stations, their crews working together on projects that would have been impossible just a year before. The Great Assembly Hall on Zalani Prime had been expanded 3 times to accommodate all the representatives gathering for the first Galactic Security Council. Species that had hidden in fear for centuries now sat openly beside former enemies, planning a future none of them had dared to imagine. Ambassador Veltar stood before the assembled delegates, his crystalline skin glowing with bright blue hope. Instead of the dull gray despair that had defined him for so long, the transformation in his appearance perfectly reflected the change that had swept across the galaxy. "We asked for support," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. "We expected perhaps a few advisors, maybe some defensive assistance. Instead, we received something unprecedented in galactic history." Admiral Li Haiyanwu sat at the human delegation table, his uniform bearing the insignia of the newly formed Galactic Defense Force. The creation of this organization had been humanity's idea, a way to ensure that no species would ever again face the kind of terror the Korthok had brought to the galaxy. Around him sat representatives from dozens of species, each one now protected under the human security umbrella. The Trelawney, who had been the Korthok's first victims, the Morviks, whose homeworld had been burned to ash, the Zalani, who had started this entire chain of events with their desperate plea for help. The Korthok threat has been permanently eliminated, Admiral Li announced to the assembly. Their military capacity has been dismantled, their weapons converted to civilian use, and their worlds are now under reconstruction. Most importantly, former imperial territories are being converted to civilian administration with full representation in this council. The transformation was remarkable to witness. Former Korthok warriors, who had once terrorized the galaxy, now worked alongside their former victims, building infrastructure under human guidance. The species that had known only conquest and destruction was learning cooperation and construction. In the weeks following the surrender, human engineers had worked with Korthok technicians to convert weapons factories into medical facilities. Military academies became schools for teaching peaceful sciences. Warrior training grounds were transformed into agricultural centers that now fed refugee populations. General Park Soyoung commanded the new Galactic Defense Force. With human ships patrolling trade routes and protecting vulnerable worlds, the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Aggression would be met with swift, overwhelming force. But peace brought prosperity and protection. The defense network wasn't just human technology. Though Dr. Kong Yuna had been working with alien scientists to incorporate the unique capabilities of different species into the growing defense system. Sensors could detect threats across vast distances. Trelawney computers could process information at incredible speeds. Even former Korthok knowledge of galactic geography proved invaluable. "You misunderstood our nature," Admiral Li explained to the assembled delegates. "We are capable of devastating warfare when necessary, but we prefer to build rather than destroy. We wage war only to preserve peace." The delegates nodded, finally understanding what made humanity unique. Other species had been strong, but humans were different. They fought not because they enjoyed violence, but because they couldn't tolerate injustice. They had the rare ability to switch from total warfare to peaceful reconstruction within hours. The Zalani had asked for minimal support against what seemed like an unstoppable enemy. Instead, they had awakened humanity's protective instincts. Unleashing a species that could wage total war and then immediately switch to rebuilding and integration, the galaxy now operated under a completely new paradigm. Aggressive species learned, Quickly, that expansion through conquest would be met with immediate and overwhelming response. But peaceful species found themselves protected by the most powerful military force in known space. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to piracy were now safe. Worlds that had lived in fear for generations could finally focus on art, science, and culture instead of survival. The galaxy was experiencing its first true golden age in recorded history. In the end, Ambassador Veltar concluded his speech. We wanted support. Humanity delivered shock and awe, followed by something even more remarkable, hope for a peaceful future among the stars. The assembled delegates erupted in applause, their various forms of approval creating a sound unlike anything heard before. In galactic history, humanity had become the reluctant guardians of galactic civilization, and they had created something beautiful from the ashes of war. The aliens had asked for help. Humanity had given them a new galaxy,